Tim, welcome along to our final podcast of the year. And appropriately, we're talking about your column, Christmas Burnout, Symptom of a Deeper Malaise. It's always good to have you with us to talk about these deep philosophical questions you seem to often bring up. And
Jason, Maxim's not just about the weather. We're about the climate, right?
That's true. And these are climate issues. And I was going to start actually by asking you a little bit of a climate question about our society. And why is it you think we value busyness? Like we at this time of year, we go, how are you? Oh, I'm so busy. And everyone, we kind of want to express, yes, we're busy. Why is that?
It's a great question, Jason. I think we've become a society of achievement, acquisition, and self-manufacture in many ways. So how do you do that? Well, you're frenetic. You have achievements professionally. You have achievements personally. Obviously, the important hobby that you have. There's the family that you obviously is super important as well. There's also, I think, technologically, the ability to seem to do more. So we have phones, we have computers, we have laptops, we have scheduling implements, etc. So there's also, interesting, you can carve up the day into 30-minute increments, and that's a way of telling yourself that you're getting somewhere, that you're achieving stuff. And I would submit maybe our ancestors had a different way of constructing who they were, and it wasn't the identity in some sense was inherited from a variety of sources. It's not something that had to be self, I suppose, constructed. So there's that as well. So it's a mixture of technology, philosophy, and theology. Sorry, probably a bit.
That's very climate. That's not weather. That's very climate. I like that, and I like the idea that our ancestors didn't necessarily construct their identity. They inherited it. It was an identity that they received in many ways. And I think that's one of the pressures of modern day life, which can lead to busyness. I think that you put your finger on it, is that we have to create who we are. And that's a big existential question, to go, who are you? Well, I have to come up with this narrative and construct it. I wonder, you also mentioned, we have the ability to work from our phones, from our laptops, to do Zoom calls like this, to interview each other. Is that conducive to leisure, or does it kind of amp up the pressure?
Yeah, I think it's again, there's the technology side of this, and actually the German philosopher that I reference in my column, Joseph Pieper, he was actually essentially cataloguing the discontents post-industrial revolution. So he goes all the way back to Greek and medieval European culture and notes that those particular cultures had an idea of leisure. I would say that because we are able, our work overflows now. We can do work at home. We can pick up our phones while sitting in a traffic jam and blast off an email. Never done that, wouldn't do it, don't advise it, but that's possible. So the constraints around actual labour and I guess a utilitarian approach to existence aren't there. What I think Pieper is arguing for is a contemplative, non-utilitarian approach to life, and that's he says that leisure is the basis of religion, and religion offers that, and it's clear that even when we're relaxing, I've seen you do it yourself, Jason, upbraiding colleagues for doom scrolling at lunch. So there's the chit chat, and then there's the doom scrolling afterwards, where sort of a fog of silence falls and people just plunge into the abyss of the internet. Now, wouldn't things be different if, say, we turned to that tree that's beside us when we're sitting outside and just looked at it and contemplated with awe and reverence for a wee while?
Yeah. Do we need to hug it, Tim, as well? Or?
Well, it's up to you. I don't want to get in the way of where you're going to go with this, Jason. But can you please not do it if you're having lunch and I'm beside you at any time.
I'll just contemplate it and then maybe enjoy the sunshine or enjoy the pleasure of your company, Tim, while we're having lunch together instead of doom scrolling.
What's interesting about what people suggest is that often a lot of the prescriptions we have are, just put down your phone, schedule less stuff, do less with less. And I do advise that in the column as a way to negotiate both post-Christmas slump and pre-Christmas burnout. But what people suggest is to actually choose leisure, to choose that sense of contemplation. Hence my suggestion to just go and look at a tree with no other intent than to understand or to try and grasp the majesty of this particular natural object that occurs. We don't pause and look at things in a contemplative way enough, and so that's something that I suggest.
And maybe having to work through the awkwardness of doing that the first couple of times as well.
Yeah.
To go, I'm just staring at a tree. What am I supposed to be feeling? I think the utilitarian nature of our culture conditions us to go,
I've got to be doing something.
I need an outcome from this, right? If I don't hit my KPIs from looking at this tree, what am I going to do? Yeah. How am I going to say that this was time well spent? How can we push back against that a little bit, do you think? Because it is a kind of a deprogramming in some ways where we have to go, this is how I've been taught to think, but it's actually not conducive to my flourishing. I need to think this way. How can we start to do that, do you think?
It happens in dribs and drabs, I would say. So, for example, try and do it for 5 minutes. Put the distractions behind you. Walk somewhere where you'll be alone in nature and do it for 5 minutes. Then set yourself the goal of doing it for 7.5 minutes. You'll fail. You'll pick up the phone or the phone will go off that's in your pocket. I don't want to say, this is a big thing about phones and our preoccupation with phones. I think philosophically, the phones are just a symptom of what I would submit would be a philosophical malaise that we have, which is the notion of busyness overflowing all aspects of our lives. Let me just quote from Pieper for a moment. Repose, leisure, peace belong among the elements of happiness. If we have not escaped from harried rush, from mad pursuit, from unrest, from the necessity of care, we are not happy. And what of contemplation? Its very premise is freedom from the fetters of workaday busyness. So there you go. Any activity that frees you from that stops that utilitarian, what can I turn this minute into? What can I turn this time into? And I suggested something, but something else may work for you. But it's just that, how can I get into a contemplative mode?
And I guess the outcome of that, you talk about in another quote, only the silent hear, which is quite a profound thing. But also it's quite, what would I say? It's quite common sense when you think about it. Like if you want to listen to someone, you actually have to close your mouth and hear what they're saying. But there's so much noise in our culture these days and in our world that it can actually be hard to create a moment of silent listening. We're kind of used to being distracted. You suggest we can cultivate it. How can we do that? Or is it a natural state, this noisiness? Do we as humans tend to noise, do you think? Or can we cultivate, or is it something we can cultivate, this silence?
Well, clearly, the post-industrial world is one that's filled up more with noise, with utility, with busyness. But there was, going back to Pieper, there was a world before that, the medieval world, the medieval European world, the Greek world, where there was part of their cultural norms were spaces for nothingness, and look, we just had a vote on Easter trading. And it was fascinating because I had expected that it would go ahead given some of the cultural preconditions we have, but it was actually pushed back on. Now that may have been, this was expanding Easter trading and making Good Friday a public holiday. But having said that, it's obvious that for whatever reason, politicians threw that out. Now, I just wonder if there is a discontent with the sort of self-empowered world that we've got ourselves into, and are searching for something else. And the question then is how we will what we will actually grasp, and that's up to we have to decide what we value and then pursue that. I think it's a suggestion that we live more intentionally. To finish that quote that you started with, only the silent hear, and those who do not remain silent do not hear. And I think, if we resume engaging, producing, fretting, then we're going to banish that silence and banish that, I guess, the restfulness that comes with contemplation. And that's the sort of paradox of this time of year just before Christmas, where we buy leisure in January, buy a frenzy in December, and we tell ourselves it'll be okay. But actually, if we don't have the right habits, it won't be okay.
There won't be any way for us to engage in leisure because we're not practiced at it. We don't have the habits of leisure. So it's just more doom scrolling and mindless scrolling. So if we're going to close out the conversation with one thing that people can do this holiday season, what would your number one pick be to get them started on this journey of de-stressing from the pre-Christmas? I'm assuming next year it'll be pre-Christmas rush. But what can we do at this point? One thing, your top pick, Tim. Tim's top tip.
I would say structure nothingness. Make time to do nothing. Now that doesn't, because often, in holidays, it's like, oh, I've got to do that thing that I've been putting off all of last year. I've got to do that. The kids are driving my beloved Batty. I've got to go and take something, take them out, do something with them. If you say, okay, what I'm going to do, like that wacko Tim Wilson from Maxim said, I should go and look at a tree. Okay, I'll go. You know what? I don't want to look at a tree. I'll look at some lavender. Or I encourage contemplation of nature because there's something about the way that, actually we were having a conversation earlier about one of the most countercultural things you can do right now is garden, because things take time to arrive. Plants take time to flower. Tomatoes don't necessarily come when you want them. That's a great discipline. Engage with nature, contemplate it, see its majesty, appreciate the awe that may open up within you, and then seek to repeat that.
Tim, that's a great thing for us to do over these holidays. So thanks for being with us, and thanks for this column. Very thoughtful.
I will if you will, Jason. Busy. That's the typical answer at this time of year to the question, how are you? Variations include super busy or crazy busy. Such as the pre-holiday logjam, leisure in January is typically purchased with frenzy in December. Of course, leisure often descends into languor and a post-Christmas slump. Bills fall due, family fights worsen, drinks get bigger, behaviour slides, as does mental health. Freshly discovered last year, a new phenomenon has surfaced: pre-Christmas burnout, recognisable by tearfulness, sleeplessness, and exhaustion. I once heard someone say, busy isn't just what I do, it's who I am. Increasingly, this isn't a seasonal issue. It's our way of life. Various reports suggest that we're becoming a busier, less patient people. Okay, one of those was from the UK, but stand at any queue, at any mall, and before long, you'll be able to smell the cortisol. We're going too fast, too often. And please, don't blame your phone. This diagnosis is by no means new. 76 years ago, German philosopher Joseph Pieper wrote a book called Leisure, the Basis of Culture. In it, he shows that the Greeks understood and valued leisure, as did the medieval Europeans. Leisure, Pieper contends, has always been, and always will be, the first foundation of any culture. Leisure, according to Pieper, is the basis for religion. If that's the case, our new faith is in the frenetic. Only that doesn't seem to be working out so well. Modern populations are increasingly overfed, malnourished, sedentary, sunlight deficient, sleep deprived, and socially isolated. The disease isn't Christmas, it's modernity. Compare that to Pieper. Quote, repose, leisure, peace belong among the elements of happiness. If we have not escaped from harried rush, from mad pursuit, from unrest, from the necessity of care, we are not happy. And what of contemplation? Its very premise is freedom from the fetters of workaday busyness. Pieper maintains that our brave new world of total labour has squashed leisure. His warning? Unless we regain the art of silence, the ability for non-activity, unless we substitute authentic leisure for our hectic amusements, we'll destroy our culture and ourselves. So this Christmas, don't do more with less, do less with less. Put down your phone. Actually, go put it in a box, lock the box, and throw that in a lake and go for a walk. Yes, you can now freely judge all those frowning minions of earbuds. And if you haven't seen someone in the previous 8 months, don't catch up with them now. Yet the absence of busyness doesn't magically create leisure. As Pieper notes, it's about choosing reflection rather than simply eschewing the frenetic. When was the last time you went outside and looked at a tree, for example? The patterns of the bark, wind playing through the leaves, or the texture of the grass below. Only the silent hear, writes Pieper, and those who do not remain silent do not hear. Shh. Merry Christmas.